Hello, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, and do all the things to help us out on social media. We really appreciate it. This is the second video for the Voter Directed Democracy audiobook. Please join us on this journey of political evolution on voterdirectednetwork.com. All voters are always welcome. Please come have your voice heard and your vote counted as we choose a voter directed political system and evolve away from the broken, flawed, corrupt, and violent party driven political system. Join us as we work to openly and transparently determine the real will of the people for every single issue via an online platform. And please remember, Voter Directed Network is the first and only platform specifically developed for voter discussion, voter collaboration, and daily voting. And we are just getting started. Our shared political future of new, innovative, logical, intuitive, modern, and evolved online democratic republics starts on Voter Directed Network. And again, all voters are always welcome. This second video is covering just the first page and a half of the book, but it is so important. In this short section, we have the first 10 bold terms, 10 super important terms that are defined clearly in the glossary at the end of the book. You just have to understand these terms to understand this idea, philosophy, and theory. I would start in the glossary. Just quickly read through those first 10 terms. Most are very straightforward. So in this video, we will read this short section and then I will explain a bit more about some of those terms. Alrighty, let's jump into the text. Part 1, Political Philosophy. To be as transparent and direct as possible, the primary purpose of this book is to promote the political philosophy of voter directed democracy. This argument for voter directed democracy is not promoting any social philosophy or economic philosophy, nor is it an argument in favor of creating a pure democracy. While the social, political, and economic spheres of modern society are deeply interconnected, voter directed democracy does not promote any specific social or economic agenda. Voter directed democracy is only concerned with the process by which political decisions are made. In other words, voter directed democracy is not concerned with what political decisions are made. Voter directed democracy is only concerned with how political decisions are made and how the will of the people is determined. The will of the people in a voter directed democracy can be understood as the desired political decisions and actions that eligible voters have collectively identified. In a voter directed democracy, the voters' representative elected officials at all levels of local, state, and federal government should execute the will of the people to the best of their ability. Sadly, it has become increasingly apparent in the modern digital age that the public agendas, which are the actions taken by elected officials in most government structures around the world, are often inconsistent with the will of the people. Furthermore, there are countless examples of corruption at all levels of supposedly democratic governments where the public agenda set by and enacted by elected officials is inconsistent with the often clearly articulated will of the people. To help solve these corruption driven inconsistencies on a systemic level, voter directed democracy is a political philosophy that advocates for all voters to have equal and direct influence on all matters of social, political, and economic importance. Again, it is important to note that voter directed democracy is only concerned with creating a modern structure for making democratic political decisions and how the will of the people is determined. It is not concerned with any particular social or economic outcome. Thus, the philosophy of voter directed democracy can be considered politically neutral or apolitical in relation to all economic and social issues. All right, some comments about this section of the book. First, there are a lot of very important big picture ideas and discussion guardrails in this session that help us stay focused on the evolutionary political idea of voter directed democracy on voter directed network. First, it is really important to distinguish between a social philosophy, an economic philosophy, and a political philosophy. Voter directed democracy is only a political philosophy. It is only focused on how government functions, and in this case, how we should practice our democratic republic given to us as voters by our US Constitution. It is just a modern and online structure to help determine the real will of the people and see it implemented at all levels of government for every single issue. Voter directed democracy is not an economic philosophy or a social philosophy. Economic philosophies are anything related to money, banks, finances, stocks, cost of living, capitalism, socialism, and all that stuff. Political philosophies are just how government should function. Then social philosophy in this context is everything else. In the glossary, I define social philosophies as ideas, arguments, and hypotheses about how humans should interact and behave. That's essentially, again, everything else that isn't a political philosophy or economic philosophy. And there are thousands and thousands of social philosophies. And voter directed democracy, again, doesn't promote any social or economic philosophy. Our social and economic philosophies are what voters should collectively determine by voting on voter directed network. Within any democratic republic at any level of government, it is equally empowered voters that should collectively determine our social and economic philosophies. To be fully transparent, I personally, just like everyone else, of course, have hundreds of social and economic philosophies, ideas, perspectives, and opinions. And I'm very transparent about my personal social and economic values, virtues, and principles in my Philosophy of Human Existence essay, which is available on Voter Directed Network. But the theory of voter directed democracy itself, this political theory, does not promote any social or economic agenda. It is completely socially and economically neutral. It is again 100% up to the voters to collectively and transparently shape social and economic policy by voting on voter directed network. This voter centric and voter empowering idea is also 100% consistent with our US Constitution and state constitutions, and really any constitution around the world that creates an honest democratic republic. It is all about voters collectively determining the will of the people and the government implementing this will. The other main discussion guardrail here is that voter directed democracy is not a theory of pure democracy. Pure democracy is an incredibly flawed theory of democracy that has never been implemented. It essentially says that voters vote on everything, but then there is no republic to implement this will of the people. And it just somehow happens. Pure democracy is just dumb. It makes no sense. I'm only mentioning pure democracy because another term for it is direct democracy. And some people, when first hearing about and learning about voter directed democracy, believe it's a theory of pure democracy. It's not. Voter directed democracy is a theory of democratic republics. In fact, voter directed democracy fully supports our US Constitution, all of our state constitutions, fully supports our republic, and is aligned completely with the US military, all elected officials, other government officials across all agencies, and all voters that pledge to support the US Constitution. Of course, anyone that knows the US Constitution knows that it is an imperfect document. The founders also knew it was imperfect, and there is a way to amend the Constitution. But overwhelmingly, the US Constitution is good, and parts of it, the Bill of Rights, the separation of power, the checks and balances, I believe those parts are great. The problem we have now is that the way we practice this amazing, wonderful theory of democracy given to us in the US Constitution and voter directed democracy on voter directed network will modernize and evolve our practices of democracy away from the current system of broken, flawed, and immensely corrupt party driven democracy that has caused immense human suffering to voters and children of our great nation. Next, we have the will of the people and the public agenda. The definitions of these terms are very intuitive. The political will of the people is what voters have collectively determined in an open, honest, and transparent way they want for a specific topic or issue at a specific level of government. Very plainly, the will of the people is what voters want. The public agenda is what the government actually does. And there is a gigantic, enormous gap between the will of the people and our public agendas. The gap is widest at the federal level, then the state level, and local government is least authoritarian and is closest to the will of the people. Why? Why such a huge gap between what voters want and what government actually does that has seemingly always been there? The simple answer is political corruption. Two types of political corruption that result in authoritarian democratic political systems and prevent the real will of the people from being openly and transparently sourced and implemented, despite what our constitutions say. I fully break this down in the next few sections, but it is the overwhelming financial corruption of the party driven political system that has gotten worse and worse decade after decade, and agenda corruption that has resulted in increasingly authoritarian public agendas. Public agendas that are so far from the real will of the people. In other words, there is a huge gap between the theory of democracy that exists in our US Constitution and how this theory is practiced. An enormous chasm between theory and practice. And the evolution of voter directed democracy on voter directed network is how we bridge this gap by evolving our political system beyond financial and agenda corruption and the party driven system. This political evolution is how we will finally be able to align our practices of democracy with the values, principles, and theory of democracy in the overall amazing US Constitution and state constitutions. And finally, it is so important to understand that the real will of the people is overwhelmingly positive, just like humanity itself. The real will of the people has always been overwhelmingly good. Do not get lost in the fear based, angry, and intentionally divisive rhetoric of the party driven system and their content creators and media networks. This is how voters have been divided and conquered and oppressed by authoritarian political ideologies for centuries. Also, some people might get confused about what the will of the people really means. Some voters will say, look at what other people voted for. Look at what people are saying. And they'll point to the anger, division, or even the violence as if it represents the will of the people. But it doesn't. The violent and destructive social, political, and economic ideologies and systems that exist are created, promoted, and platformed by political parties. Most of the negativity is not the real will of the people. It's the result of a broken party driven system, a system that uses fear, division, and manipulation to control voters, a system that forces people to react to corruption and chaos rather than choose real solutions to our many social, political, and economic problems. To control wealth and power, the party driven system has to keep voters afraid, angry, and divided. And you will never question or be able to evolve beyond the party driven mindsets when you are afraid, angry, and divided. You will continue to blame other oppressed, disempowered voters, individual elected officials, and individual political parties for the immense flaws, corruption, divisiveness, and authoritarian dynamics of the entire party driven system that has had the real power and has for centuries. Focus instead on evolving and modernizing the broken, flawed, and immensely corrupt party driven system and aligning our democratic republic with the real will of the people. The real will of the people that is overwhelmingly positive, good, loving, caring, empathetic, compassionate, encouraging, supportive, generous, kind, courageous, wise, just, and tempered. This is proven by humanity every single day. Every single day, trillions of good and positive interactions define our existence in this country and around the world. This overwhelming positivity doesn't help the party driven system keep you oppressed, afraid, and divided. So often it isn't promoted. But positive, good human interactions are our default. The trillions of daily interactions with our transportation systems, food systems, and education systems are overwhelmingly positive, for just a few examples. The trillions of daily interactions we have with family, friends, neighbors, and community systems are overwhelmingly positive. What the vast majority of all voters want for ourselves, our families, friends, neighbors, and community is all overwhelmingly positive. The collective consciousness of the people, the will of the people is positive, compassionate, and cooperative. But authoritarian political systems and corruption have prevented this overwhelmingly positive will from being implemented into society systemically. But for centuries now, our country has had the right theory for government: democracy, democratic republics, constitutional republics, theories where the government should be relentlessly dedicated to implementing the will of the people. And now, today, we finally have the modern online computer technology we need to fully operationalize and practice these amazing theories of democracy. And we will do that with the political evolution of voter directed democracy on Voter Directed Network. With that, video 2 of this audiobook has come into a close. Thank you so much for watching. Please also like and subscribe and comment and do all the things that help us out across all social media. Please also join us on Voter Directed Network. This evolution is truly inevitable. Everything else, all other parts of our society have moved online to some extent, and our political system is the final frontier for our modern online technology. Once we have our political system online, then we can truly begin to implement the real will of the people, which will give us the ability to solve our many social, political, and economic problems that have been created and perpetuated by the corrupt, party driven system. The political evolution is going to happen. It's going to be beautiful, honest and transparent, modern and evolved, collaborative and cooperative, logical and intuitive online democratic republics are undeniably the future of democracy. How fast this evolution happens is up to voters. It is entirely 100% in the hands of voters. Whether it takes months or years to fully implement the evolution of voter directed democracy on Voter Directed Network and online democratic republics depends on how fast voters choose this modern and evolved form of democracy. So, whenever you are ready to do your part to help us modernize and evolve our democratic republics and bring them online and into the digital age, please join us on VoterDirectedNetwork.com. All voters are always welcome.